Why your paycheck is designed to feel enough. Most people don't feel underpaid. They feel okay. Their paycheck covers the bills. There's food on the table. Rent or the mortgage gets paid. Maybe there's even a little left over at the end of the month. Not much, but enough to feel like things are under control. And that's exactly the problem. Because when something feels enough, it rarely triggers change. It quiets urgency. It lowers questions. It convinces you that you're doing fine, even when the long-term math doesn't actually work. If you've ever wondered why years of steady work don't seem to translate into real freedom, or why financial pressure never fully disappears despite earning more over time, there's a reason for that. Your paycheck isn't just income. It's a psychological tool, one that's carefully calibrated to keep you functional, but rarely independent. This topic matters because most people don't feel financially trapped, they feel stable. And stability, when it's just enough, can be more dangerous than struggle. For a large portion of people in the US and the UK, financial life feels predictable. A paycheck arrives on schedule. Bills get paid. There's food on the table. Maybe there's a small buffer left over. Not enough to feel wealthy, but enough to feel responsible. Enough to avoid panic. That sense of enough quietly shapes behavior. When money covers the basics, urgency fades. Big questions get postponed. Long-term risks feel distant. People tell themselves they'll think seriously about freedom, investing, or change later, when things slow down or feel more secure. But that moment rarely comes. Any increase in income often brings temporary relief, followed by higher expenses and expectations. Rent, mortgages, transportation, lifestyle costs, and social norms expand to match earnings. Inflation works in the background, slowly reducing purchasing power. Over time, people earn more but feel no freer. What makes this especially risky is that nothing feels obviously wrong. There's no crisis to react to, just a narrow range of choices shaped by the next paycheck. Time remains tied to income, and income remains tied to showing up consistently. The core problem isn't low pay or poor budgeting. It's that a paycheck designed to feel enough keeps people functional, but dependent, comfortable enough to continue, but constrained enough to never build real flexibility. And when that pattern goes unquestioned, years can pass without meaningful progress toward financial freedom. If a paycheck feels enough, it's rarely an accident. It's the result of overlapping systems and habits that quietly reinforce each other over time. At a structural level, most jobs are designed around predictability. Employers need people who show up consistently, plan their lives around work, and remain dependent on regular income. A paycheck that fully removes financial pressure would reduce that dependence. One that creates constant stress would increase turnover. Enough sits perfectly in the middle, motivating compliance without rebellion. Culturally, this is reinforced early. Financial responsibility is framed as stability. A steady income becomes the goal, not a tool. As long as bills are paid and nothing breaks, people are told they're doing well. That narrative discourages questioning whether the setup actually leads anywhere long-term. Then habits lock it in. As income rises, lifestyle adjusts almost automatically. Better housing, higher fixed costs, more commitments, not because people are careless, but because progress is often mistaken for comfort. Each adjustment reduces flexibility while maintaining the feeling of normalcy. Another layer is psychological. When life feels manageable, the brain prioritizes short-term certainty over long-term strategy. Planning decades ahead feels abstract compared to meeting next month's obligations. So investing, skill building, and ownership are postponed until later. None of this requires bad decisions. It works precisely because it feels reasonable. But combined, these forces create a system where effort increases while leverage stays flat. People work harder, earn more, and yet remain tightly bound to their paycheck, not because they failed, but because enough was never designed to lead to independence. That's the root cause most people never stop to examine. If enough keeps people comfortable but constrained, the solution isn't to reject stability, it's to stop letting stability define the finish line. The most important shift is moving from reaction to intention. Most people react to their paycheck. They adjust spending after money feels tight. They think about investing after they feel behind. They consider changing careers only when frustration becomes unbearable. But by the time those signals appear, options are already limited. A different approach starts with redefining what income is for. A paycheck isn't proof that you're winning. It's raw material. Used intentionally, it can build skills, fund long-term investments, and create flexibility over time. Used passively, it disappears into fixed expenses and resets every month. This doesn't require quitting a job or taking extreme risks. It requires asking better questions. Does your current role increase long-term earning leverage, or just short-term comfort? Are you using surplus income to buy convenience, or to buy options? Are your financial decisions making future choices easier or harder? Another key shift is focusing on leverage instead of effort. Working harder can raise income temporarily, but it rarely changes the structure of your life. Skills that scale, ownership that compounds, and systems that reduce dependence on time are what slowly break the paycheck-to-paycheck loop. Progress here often feels slow and unexciting. That's normal. Real financial change rarely announces itself early. But unlike reactive decisions, intentional ones build momentum. Over time, pressure eases, flexibility grows, and money starts to feel less like a constraint, not because you have everything figured out, but because you're finally moving in a deliberate direction. The long-term impact of a paycheck that feels enough rarely shows up quickly. That's why so many people underestimate it. In the short term, life looks stable. You work, you get paid, you handle responsibilities. There's no clear reason to panic, and no obvious signal that something is wrong. But over years, the effects compound. When income is just enough to maintain your lifestyle, flexibility slowly disappears. More of your future earnings become pre-committed to fixed costs. More of your time is locked into obligations that can't easily be paused. Any unexpected expense feels heavier, not because it's large, but because there's no margin to absorb it. As responsibilities grow, risk tolerance shrinks, career moves feel harder, long-term investments feel less accessible. Even small changes require more effort and more justification. Life becomes reactive by default. Not because of poor choices, but because the structure leaves little room to breathe. By contrast, when people use early years to build leverage instead of comfort, the trajectory looks different. Progress isn't dramatic, but it's durable. Skills deepen, assets compound quietly, time becomes less tightly tied to income. Decisions feel lighter because there's room to adjust. This is where time becomes the real advantage. Consistency matters more than intensity. Direction matters more than speed. People who prioritize flexibility early don't need extreme effort later, because momentum does the work for them. Financial freedom, in this sense, isn't about luxury, it's about choice, the ability to slow down, pivot, or say no without panic. And that freedom is built long before it's ever felt. At the end of the day, this isn't about rejecting work, income, or stability. A paycheck isn't the enemy. The danger lies in never questioning what that paycheck is quietly training you to accept. Most people don't feel poor. They feel busy. They feel responsible. They feel like they're doing what they're supposed to do. And because life remains manageable, deeper questions get delayed. Comfort dulls curiosity. Routine replaces reflection. The problem is that enough has a hidden price. It keeps you functional, but it also keeps you dependent. It encourages short-term thinking while quietly pushing long-term freedom further away, not through force, but through habit. Once you start seeing this clearly, something shifts. You begin to notice how often decisions are made to preserve comfort rather than build flexibility. How often security today is chosen at the expense of options tomorrow. How drifting feels harmless in the moment, but expensive over decades. The goal isn't to overhaul your life or to have everything figured out. Very few people ever do. The real shift is awareness. Understanding why your current setup feels safe, and what it may be preventing you from building. Recognizing that small, repeated choices matter more than dramatic moves. Financial clarity doesn't arrive overnight. It develops gradually, through questioning assumptions, making intentional adjustments, and staying consistent even when progress feels slow. But once that clarity begins, it changes how you relate to money, work, and time. You stop asking how to make this month easier, and start asking how to make the next 10 years more flexible. So here's the question to leave you with. Does your paycheck truly support the life you want, or does it simply feel enough to keep you from asking bigger questions? And what part of your financial or career life feels the most constrained right now? Share your thoughts in the comments. That's often where clearer thinking and better direction begins.